Good morning. I'm Dr. David Howell, the Dean of Students here at Milwaukee School of Engineering. I'm the former Chair for Servant Leadership. I'm really excited because Deanna Leitsky, the Chair for Servant Leadership at MSUE, gets to be one of the speakers along with some other great people. MSUE has benefited from an endowment from the Susan and Richard Pieper Family Foundation for about 9 years now. And we've really enjoyed working with the foundation and Dick Pieper specifically bringing servant leadership to the culture of our academic institution. It's been a lot of fun. I'm really glad that you're all here today at this event where we can talk about servant leadership and create community here in Milwaukee around the tenets of servant leadership. I'm really excited. I always enjoy these events. Right now I'm going to hand the microphone to Dick Pieper. The speakers, if everybody could please use the microphone for the purposes of our recording, that would be great.
Okay, we say that in servant leadership, one of the qualities of a servant leader is to what?
Listen.
Listen. Excellent, excellent, excellent. And Tom is going to record what you're seeking today. What are your expectations? You came here likely for a reason. And we'd like to make a list of those. And then we'll ask the speakers, the discussion session, all to try to cover these areas. This table has a minority of men, so I thought I'd start with that.
We're here this morning just to continue expanding our knowledge and understanding of servant leadership and working on our skill sets with that, becoming better leaders.
Becoming better leaders. Excellent.
A refresher, find out how we can refresh our knowledge and involvement, find the community involved servant leadership in the community around us.
Some of us came to kind of reconnect, recharge, get reacquainted with the ideas of servant leadership. Some of us came to make some new friends, meet some new connections, and hear some new ways of thinking about this concept.
We're all here to learn, to network with each other and learn how to become less traditional, I think was what was discussed at our table.
Our approach would be to, it's tied in with the first one there, has to do with how can we foster new leaders to replace those that might be leaving the workplace because of the baby boomer era.
We're here, or I'm here, to get experience and to hear people's comments on networking and taking skills to adapt to young people adapt their ability to become a better servant.
Good morning. Actually, we said that we were here to connect with old friends that we knew would be here and meet new friends as we get to see you and talk with you this morning. Personally, I want to get re-energized, hear some great stories, and see what other people are doing in the community.
Now, I'm asking everybody in the discussion breakout groups and in the speakers to please keep these in mind as you make your comments, incorporate them. It's kind of like what we try to do in institutions of higher learning, is not teach a course on leadership, but demonstrate its application in each of the classes that are taught. How does it work in that class?
Pam comes from the medical college. Tom, Dave, and Matt are all at Pieper, and then I work in the nonprofit sector. And so talking about how this applies in different ways and how to make it work, and specifically we're talking about the for-profit sector and how to make it work and juxtapose that with the need to be efficient, the need to meet timelines, and the need to be profitable, and how to make it work. And all three of these guys talked about the fact that they've seen the negative, the forceful, the authoritative way of leading, and how they've learned that the being calm, the being supportive, the being empowering is much more of a effective way to get things done. When you talk to people and you're calm and treat them well, then you get better results and better, happier staff. And talking about how to use this work to empower people, to encourage the confidence in folks. Also talked about, we have some history in the military and again, a long history of maybe leaders that don't empower this, and so the need to apply this and unlearn bad habits that we have and work around the bad examples that we see, and there are sometimes lots of bad examples that were there. And so whether it's our peers or those above us or those below us, being able to work around those and apply this work. A couple of the points from the presentation that brought up Deanna's equation for foresight about your self-awareness and your intuition, and then kind of applied from that, being comfortable with your weaknesses and also comfortable with your failures, and then touching back on Jeff's idea that from both success and failure there are clues, and so you can learn things from both of those experiences. And then just the last piece from Geneva's talk about empowering others, you have to be clear with who you are to empower them, and also the importance of integrity and connecting the integrity of what you do to the integrity of the person you are.
Excellent, thank you.
We're just going to quick go through an overview of the three speakers. Geneva, with her servant leadership starts within and radiates outward. That was a powerful statement, and that's so true. Deanna's example, the building of the deck over the past 6 to 7 years was an excellent metaphor of how leadership doesn't happen all at one time or overnight. It takes time to continually build on anything. And then Chef Jeff, where are you? Sees the end result and the building blocks of the end results, both in his career and personal life. It was a very interesting viewpoint, and it was very inspiring.
Excellent, thank you.
We talked about the importance of learning and teaching servant leadership because with baby boomers aging and aging out of the workforce, there's going to be a major transfer of power, and we need to develop leaders and younger people in the next generation. We talked about the leadership model in the 80s and 90s, which tended to be more power-based, and that maybe works to a certain point, but then it doesn't always work and improve society. And we talked about the benefit of experience. You can read a book once and then 5 years later read it again and you get totally new ideas out of it. And that's the same with maybe teaching empathy and things like that. As we get older, the benefit of experience, we learn new things and improve on our skills. So can leadership be taught, or is it innate? We decided it certainly can be taught and built upon. And then we talked about some examples of servant leadership, some successful organizations, Festival Foods and Lacrosse. The families whose kids work at that company are just amazed at how the kids are learning skills and bringing them home, changing their character even. We talked about the military post-Vietnam and how they're based on servant leadership, and even the Navy SEALs is a great example of servant leadership apart from spirituality.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks, Dick. We had an interesting conversation at our table, just talking about, all the three speakers, they resonated, I think, in a common theme about how they all maybe grew up with parents or family that instill values, ethics, morals, and how they, learned leadership, or servant, I should say, servant first from those folks that they grew up with. And we talked about that at our table a bit, and we talked about how it's really important that people in this group and people that would aspire to be servant leaders really need to reach out to those communities, to the young folks that maybe are not in those types of situations as they're growing up, to help mentor, inspire them to be live more in a servant first servant first way of life. We said that many folks today are are in a place where, you know, they're struggling to survive, and they're thinking of their own survival first versus reaching out and becoming a servant to others. And I think the last thing we talked about was this group at our table. We talked about how they became, or how they came upon thinking of themselves as a servant leader. I think, Deanna, you had mentioned that, you know, you grew up in a family that you became a servant first, and then over a period of time grew into be a leader and as a servant leader. And we had some folks at our table that started up the same way, became a servant first, and maybe over a period of time became a leader. But then we also had others, and it was an interesting conversation. They became that forceful leader first, and through maybe some things in their lives, whether it was family or working with the right folks, learned to be a servant after they became a leader. And so we had, it was interesting. We talked, it would be interesting to see in this group who started out as a servant and became a leader, or who started out as a leader and then learned to be a servant. And I guess I would ask, who started out as a servant and became a leader? Raise their hand. Just interesting. And who became a leader first and learned to be a servant later? Probably almost 50-50, I'm guessing. Didn't take a count there, but it looked pretty interesting. So those are just some thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you, John.
Hi everybody, my name is Lori, and I'm going to be very brief. At our table, we talked a little bit about why we came particularly today to talk about foresight, and how we felt it's one of the harder tenets of servant leadership to understand and connect to the other tenets. And so that was part of what drove some of us here, particularly today. And we also talked a little bit, as John was saying, about how really all three speakers talked about their past and how that provided a lens for foresight. And we didn't talk about this, but it made me think about how sort of that reflective component is really important to identity and one's identity development, especially in when talking about things like foresight, because it's a difficult concept, I think, to sort of wrap one's head around, make it a little bit easier to relate to one's own life when you look at your past, things like this.
Thank you.
Our table picked up a couple themes related to process and really recognition of people. So the first part is process. The process we described is really a transformational authenticity. I think were some of the key words that came up with. In other words, you need to continually assess who you are and the people that are around you. And not only do you need to recognize and know them, but you need to somehow leverage and learn from that as well. Another key piece of it is that personality is not a box. And so we all have different strengths and weaknesses, and we need to leverage that. We need to create a power sharing environment and create our own voice, and that allows us to do some leading up in the process as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Bruce. Just want to share a couple of points that really resonated, just some concepts and principles. The first one is being a servant leader wherever you are, which led into a conversation around the table of people who have had or are experiencing bullying in the workplace, and how servant leadership really is the antidote to that. Another one was on the concept of foresight is building something for the long term, always keeping focused on the end product, with the end product really focusing on the people involved. Geneva, I think it was, the 3 Ps, started with people, and then product, and then profit will follow. The picture of the lion, Chef Jeff, and truth, and just let truth run. It'll take care of itself, but just be communicating truth in everything that we do. Geneva, your question, we talked a little bit about, it doth not yet appear what ye shall be, or that statement rather, and came back with a question, well, when do you know when doth it appear that ye shall be? And we came to the conclusion you never get there because it's a lifelong process. Another thought was believing in believing in where you are going. Deanna, the fact that you communicated that to other people, which then affected the path in which your life has taken you, and you've ended up back here at MSOE. Two other things. The focus on strengths is something that we talked about, and others have mentioned that. In terms of networking, starting something, that each of us around the table thought about going back and simply living out these principles. And even taking Jeff's little chart here and saying once a day I'm going to focus on one of these with people that I work with and engage with, and and then look at my score the next day to find out whether I've gone up or whether I've gone down. Our conclusion, though, is that this is all very hard to do. This doesn't come easy. It just doesn't happen. It requires work and effort and commitment on all of our parts.